I am Yori Folarin. Well, we always have serious topics, but I was going to say we have a very serious topic this morning because it concerns money. And in that regard, the dollar must have been giving a lot of people who don't even necessarily use the dollar like that nightmares, because the figures, it has crossed the 1,000 naira mark. It is even creeping ahead. And the last time I checked, these figures keep on changing, but it might be anywhere between 1,180 and 1,200, prompting social media comments that, is it when it gets to 2,000 naira that it's going to stop? People are reacting to the shock that the dollar to the naira has actually reached and passed the 1,000 naira mark. Economists are referring to this as a worsening Forex illiquidity. So we can understand that. Now we have an expert in Professor Ken Ife, macroeconomic and public policy analyst, to help us understand all of this. A fine morning to you, Prof.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, as always. First of all, where is the pressure coming from? Maybe we sort of start like that, because this pressure that has now worsened the value of the naira next to the dollar, where is this pressure coming from? Can we liken it again to factors of demand and supply?
Yeah, I think if you permit me, this is a very sensitive topic and it's very, very vast, the issues involved. But I hope you can permit me to lay a foundation to this discussion,
please,
for the benefit
Prof.
of the viewers who get confused.
Yes. Excellent.
First of all, Forex is price, and so is inflation, so is a monetary policy rate, so is interest rate. They're all price. In any price mechanism, you have to have demand and supply perspectives. Most people just talk about the demand, but they don't talk about the supply of this Forex, of this dollar mostly. So that's number one. The number two is that all the dollars available to the big elephant in the room, which is NNPC, all the dollars that they earn, because it's 90% of our Forex, 79% for crude, 11% for gas. All of that money are actually enough to deal with the Nigerians' demand for dollar. We would come to the imperfections. Number three is that all the dollars in the system, in the banks, by individuals, in their domiciliary accounts, diaspora remittance, all of that money on its own are actually enough to deal with the demand that we have in the economy. What you now have are issues we are going to unravel. But let's first take the big issue, apart from NNPC. The big issue is this. Nigeria, as well as Africa, there's an international division of labor. And that international division of labor places Nigeria and Africa as producers of commodities. And those commodities are agricultural commodities, raw crude, not even refined petroleum. This is processing, value addition. Raw cocoa, raw cassava, everything raw, solid mineral. And so the expectation is that all of this will come to the West to process and then bring it back for us to consume. That is where we have been placed by historical precedents, by International Division of Labor. So what you find are all the systems and political economy are fighting to perpetuate that status quo. Now, you come and say, okay, what should we do? We have to have progressive value addition as a strategy to be able to add value to our products, what will grow, so that we can eat and substitute for what we are importing. In that way, we'll have a position on the foreign market to bring in dollars from what things we have added value to. When you don't do that, then what happens is that the things you depend on, which is petroleum commodity, the prices go up and down. You have no control over that price. You don't have control over those raw prices. That's one. So keep that by the side. The second issue is, why is it hurting us so much? I know that, the second issue about this, the strategies, government strategies, eat what you produce and then produce what you eat. Okay, and then that then means that if you encourage production, then it will come to the level where it will substitute for import. And then the third strategy government has is what they call export-led growth, which means if you produce for export, it has a big chance of creating jobs at home and reducing poverty sustainably and inviting investments into our economy. So those are the things government has been doing. But what you now have to see is what has gone wrong. Now, if you look at the issue about illiquidity, the issue about illiquidity is what I have just mentioned. That dollars and monies are sequestered in different sections, and then they are not moving. For example, you have regulations that are keeping your domiciliary account dollar and not allowing you to transfer it, to use it to pay, because you can say it's dollarizing the economy. But also, so what you have is that these monies are there, and if you want to use dollar to pay for a dollar, they will say it has to be an imported dollar before you can use it. Then two, you have the foundation of the Forex guidance is eligible buyer and seller. And then you have people that say, okay, the bank sees a receivable coming in dollar. They organize and buy it and buy it at a price you don't know. But they still go to the official market to consummate that transaction at a price that is consistent with the going price. There is an arbitrage. There is something between what they are actually buying it for and what they are already sold on the market. You see arbitrage. And you also hear arbitrage being mentioned time and time again. Within the government, multiple government windows, there was arbitrage. And then that means you can buy it and then you go and sell it in the black market. No, that has closed. The one is unified, the government one. But because you have black market and the things happen, the equilibrium price are moving because there are more activities now on that code end of the black market than in the government market. So that's why the simply said, okay, bring back the 41 items into the official market, and that creates another dynamics because it hasn't dealt with some of the issues, but it has done something. So if you want, I can bring out the rest of the things as we begin to talk.
Okay. What does it mean, Prof? The information we get that in the very near future, the federal government will be automating transactions in the entire foreign exchange market. Automating transactions. So what does that mean? And it says that this will tame wide arbitrage that you spoke about, and also that they'll be very strict in punishing speculators.
Well, that is a good idea. But the thing is that the devil is in the implementation. Now, what has happened now is, given the background that I laid about the fact that what we have in the country can actually deal with the need, and then what NNPC could earn could also deal with the need. So those strictures and sequestering of all those things that are happening is what presidential order is trying to unblock. So what has happened is that 2 days ago, when the president gave his speech, what he said is that, okay, two things in the speech yesterday, 2 days ago, was one, there is $10 billion in our line of sight. And then these explanations came that these $10 billion can come from demand and supply actions. Demand action is we're going to have to reduce demand, however way you want to do it. Of course, you also have to reduce overhead costs of NNPC somehow and all that. Then we want to increase supply, so more crude will be produced, and then hopefully we'll get more. Then forward sales of crude and forward sales of some other assets consistent with our Ministry of Finance Incorporated moves. So all of those are actually going to help to show up supply of Forex. So we just work on those. Then you have the Sovereign Investment Fund is coming up with some proposals that they could be able to help in investment flow and all of that. So that's all part of it. But you have two presidential orders that have come in. And those presidential orders are on monetary policy. Of course, some part of fiscal policy, since I've just discussed, enumerated, are actually mainly fiscal policy. Now, what that says, one of them says, you know what, I want to bring all the dollars that are all over the place in the economy, bring them into the formal economy so that you can unlock the liquidity. The liquidity is that these monies are blocked here and they're not allowed to move. So that has been That is done. So it is now, what it means is that you now have a statutory forbearance. And that statutory forbearance, you remember that was done in 2020 during the COVID, where central banks said to the banks, I'm granting you statutory forbearance to waive this, to restructure these loans, to do that, to reduce it to 5% for interest. So all of that. And then later you come back. So that's what is going on now. So we don't know how long it's going to be. And then when you ease the flow, then there may also be issues around money laundering and all of that. But these are some of the challenges that we'll have to deal with. But the fact of the matter, we need to deal with the emergency. This is a state of emergency. The president didn't announce state of emergency, but the measures that are rolling out amount to measures that you could have taken under state of emergency. Now, the second one says, I'm going to allow you to create foreign instruments, currency instruments. That means that we can raise bonds in dollars here or euro, and they are denominated in those foreign currencies in our domestic economy. So if people who are interested, if you say, for example, you say, okay, I want to raise $10 billion instrument, and then people in the diaspora, they are 7% interest, they will invest. 8% interest, they will invest. So you get a lot of flow of dollar into the economy for those bonds, and then they give us all the things that we need. Of course, they should be able to also take them back when they want to cash in and all that stuff. Yeah. So that is very important, that we are now creating new instruments that could be used to pull in dollars. And then, of course, they may also want to ask for guarantees of those. So that is a very novel one. So when you look at these two coming together, then they would increase liquidity. And then also, when government set up Ministry of Finance Incorporated, the idea in incorporating us, and I happen to be a member of that Presidential Governing Council, the idea is that we have dormant assets. We have non-performing assets of government. I'm talking about thousands of those. And so why don't we just leverage on those to unlock liquidity, sweat some of these equities, and then get some liquidity out of these assets, instead of just keep going on debt instruments. Debt instruments. And debt instruments means your balance sheet is going to be deteriorating every day. They're going to be impacting on your foreign exchange transaction. They're going to be asking you to find money to service these debts. But it's a different ball game if your instruments are now going to be, asset-based instruments. So you are now getting money, forward sales of, somebody wants 25-year lease on this asset. You pay me that 25 years money, I'm not paying interest on it, then it's up to you if you want to go and reactivate it and get your money from there. You are beginning to raise money. And then you are using those assets. You are bringing them back into use. And then you are also looking at investment portfolios around those assets, apart from, world-class asset management companies. So all of those are happening together. And it's a physical, that's the fiscal side. And then complemented by a monetary side. And then making sure that there's a handshake. So, on a normal day, I would have said, what the hell is going on? Why is President wading into monetary policy to put these instruments out, and then what's CBN going to be doing? So, but when you realize that the President knows what he's doing, actually, he knows, he has that nose for where things have gone wrong and what the courage to attack those. And then certainly he has his two right-hand men, the erudite finance minister, and then also the central bank governor. So they're all working together. I don't think they will undermine each other. And so I would believe that there has been a discussion and engagement on what has to be done and how quickly it has to be done. I mean, the Monetary Policy Committee has not been sitting, so quickly. Even if they sit every day, it will take them a much longer time to roll out those two executive orders that has been given by the government. Because they will go to argue that. So the president has rolled them out, taking these guys into account, and then hope that they will improve the coordination and alignment between monetary and fiscal policy.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Prof. Now, it's one thing, just as you've explained, and thank you very much for that, because it sort of it does shed a bit of light for those who are non-technical economists, in the sense that a man like Tolu Ogunlesi can take for granted. But this matter about the central bank, when the governor, Yemi Cardoso, was speaking at the recent summit, he said that he assured that the Apex Bank But going forward, will take its objective of price stability very, very seriously. Now, first of all, so the question comes up of, oh, were we lax in that area before? Because the governor says that going forward, we're going to take this whole problem of, ensuring price stability very seriously indeed. Maybe you could explain price stability along with your commentary on the difference between what the central bank used to do and what the Emeka Doso has said will now be the order of the day.
See, there are two core mandates of the central bank. One is financial system stability, just to make sure that the financial system is stable. And they have prudential guidelines and strict bank supervision and parameters that they use to watch the health of the banking sector. Things like NPR ratios and capital adequacy ratios and non-performing loans and all these other, those other indices, cash reserve ratio and liquidity ratio and all of that. Then they have the second mandate, which is on price stability. Now that's where you have all the inflation figures and all these other ones, NPR rates and interbank rates, all of those, and Forex, of course. Forex is another rate mechanism. And that is where you have the most problem, because all the parameters that affect those prices are not within the orbit of the central or monetary policy. So that's number one about that constraint. But then also, you also have binding constraints that are structural. For example, insecurity. The central bank doesn't deal with insecurity. Then you have power supply, infrastructure, the deficit. I mean, our stock of infrastructure is only at 5% of the GDP. Most countries are over 80%. In South Africa, 80%. And then we're so far behind. We have to continue to invest in infrastructure. But we have to invest in such a way that it is capable of repaying the money. That's why you need a lot of PPPs. You need to do cost-benefit analysis. You need to make sure that you are targeting the infrastructure to the economy, to the economic opportunities and clusters, so that you can have a return, and then bringing in leveraging private sector. The second, the medium-term development plan says we want to borrow 350 trillion naira, but only 50 will come from all levels of government. Private sector go and find 300 trillion. That tells you how important private sector is in this equation. You have to leverage them. You have to bring incentives. Private sector responds to incentives, not to the things you say. The incentives you give to them is what they respond to. But you also have to watch it, because, for example, when we are having issues with our waivers, of course, duty waivers and all of that, and there are issues, real issues there. Okay, now where do we go from there in terms of the dynamics of the policy? That's the third one. Apart from, I've talked about the price stability, I've talked about financial system stability. There's the third one. Central banks have an added role to promote sustainable economic development. Now, that's where the intervention comes in. The domestic finance intervention comes in because of that role. And let me tell you why that role is necessary. It may be open to abuse at some point, but it is necessary because we run a market economy. We're not running a command economy. A market economy means that we're all there hoping that market forces will resolve things. You've seen it. Market forces are not resolving the foreign exchange. Market forces are not resolving the asymmetries in lending. For example, there are many sectors that are starved, especially the real sector, that are starved of funds because the banks and the financial system don't see them as viable. One point there is agriculture. So central bank has to step in to de-risk agriculture. That's why I set up NISA and gave me $500 million, which they haven't even touched. But they borrowed against those and then de-risk agriculture by 80% and all of that. And the central bank also came and said, oh, okay, you know what? I have 32.5% of the money from these commercial banks in my vault, over 6 trillion, that is not earning them any interest. So you know what? I want you to target your lending to the real sector. So come and take this money, but lend them over a medium term, because they're not lending medium term to the real sector. And then give them 9% interest and moratorium. That is a special grace that they are giving to commercial bank to come and take this money and lend and target it to area that is weak, not performing. And then you saw what happened during COVID and then during the recession that followed with it, where resources were targeted. For example, I remember that I argued that if you don't, people are losing their jobs. If you don't,
excuse me, forgive me for butting in, Prof. We're going to return to this that you're explaining, especially this question of market forces. I'd like to ask a question there. But in the meanwhile, Mr. George Inikeja has called in. Good morning. Thank you for holding on a bit.
Good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning to the Prof.
Yes.
Uncle Yori, kindly permit me to say something about yesterday's program. I made an observation, and I thought I should make it known. Yesterday, Nigerians from all over the world were calling this program to celebrate the victory the country had against some fraudsters from outside this country. And then one person called from the UK to say something that I said should be brought to the fore. He said he would have loved the fraudsters to win the case, if not for his concern for the poor masses in Nigeria. I noticed, Uncle Yori, this same caller, during the elections, the build-up to the elections, he called this parliament on 3 occasions, venting his hatred for then candidate Tinubu. He vowed that Tinubu will not win that election. But he forgot that the will of men is different from the will of God.
Okay.
For me,
yeah, I remember that. That was the most unpatriotic. I beg your pardon for interrupting, Mr. George. Thank you very much. I do remember that was Ade who called in from the UK and saying that he would have wished Nigeria had lost, but for the poor men. Thank you very much. But Mr. George, thank you very much for bringing it up. Indeed, it wasn't the most patriotic thing we've heard on the program, but it is what it is. I didn't want to break the flow of the explanation that we're getting. I'm sure, as a business person yourself, did you have an input you wanted to add to this question of the worsening Forex illiquidity? Oh, Mr. George, are you still there? Well, okay, he's gone, unfortunately. Well, I didn't want us to break the flow because we were getting a sort of an understanding of all the factors that are going on in the whole monetary financial system, such as our guest, Professor Ken Ife, is explaining to us. Now, to return to the question of, you were explaining market forces. And I was going to, maybe we can continue that by my observing that oftentimes we hear experts say that, well, when it comes to monetary policies like this, you can't leave everything to market forces. They expect that government needs to intervene, although it doesn't want to make a habit of it. But again, could you sort of enlighten a bit in that whole area where some are saying that market forces, good as they are, but you have to intervene? What's the meaning, the understanding behind that position?
Now, the thing is this. There is an imbalance between the supply of Forex and the demand for Forex. Let me give you an example of what is going on. From 2014, NNPC used to send $3 billion every month to CBN. Okay? But now, they only send 10% of that $3 billion, about 300 million. And if you look at NNPC, they earn 90% of the Forex, 79% crude, 11% gas, and then 10% is all that is within the purview of the central bank. But then even then, that's where remittance is significant there. And then that's going away into the black market and stuff like that. So the CBN needs $2 billion every month, to settle. I mean, we have to pay for interest on loans that are denominated in dollars. We have to service outstanding payments like arrears, airlines, and all of that. And then there are other things that you have to use dollars for. But it gets only about 300 million instead of 2 billion. And then you have markets. You go to the market, Importers are looking for $4.6 billion a month to import things. Add these two, that gives you 6.8 billion that they are looking for, 6.6 billion that are being looking for. And then against what receipt? The receipt is so low, so small. That's imbalance. You cannot, in a situation where you have this imbalance, say I'm floating naira. You can float, and then we'll see where it's going to fall to. What happens is that you have to manage it. And you manage it by intervening gradually. Sometimes you will intervene. But also bear in mind that when you intervene, that is actually subsidy that you are doing. You are subsidizing the forex market. And then you have to always take that decision to what level of intervention, because you still need to intervene in production. You don't subsidize consumption. That's the idea. That's the question about petroleum subsidy. You don't subsidize consumption because you are paying for somebody's job out there. But if you subsidize production like agriculture and all of that, then you are creating jobs, keeping them here, and using your own, feeding yourself. So that's the big idea. So you always have to be weighing those things at each point in the policy frame. So that's that.
Now, thank you, Prof. The question of the new guidelines, the new regulations, indeed, the two executive orders that the president signed last week or so, all of this, especially the one that interests me, is where all foreign exchange, wherever it's coming from, will be seen, as it were, you have one view of the total supply of foreign exchange, as opposed to what's happening now. Now, I understand that bit, but how well do you think the compliance will do? Because you have banks. In every bank, just about every bank, let me speak about Lagos, where I'm based here, so I know about that. You want Forex, it is the bank itself that will tell you, rather than sell to you, say, look, go outside there and ask for, ask for Malam so, and he will deal with you. Does that factor into this? Because that certainly is not part of what government knows about, in a forensic sort of a way. So, and it's happening in all banks. There's no bank that does not have a currency dealer attached to it who's sitting, quietly outside, knowing full well that the very banking officials are going to send customers his way. Is that an important part of this?
Yeah, these are the asymmetries I was talking about. You have, as I have explained to you, how our domiciliary accounts, which are in dollars and euro and all that, there are restrictions on what you can use that to pay for. And then you can collect dollars and go and put in there. But when you want to use it to settle some bills, you are restricted. They will say, yes, okay, bring only the one inflow that came from abroad that you could use. Then so you've got all that. And then you have the transactions going on in the IMTO, the International Money Transfer Organizations, that are collecting remittances and all kinds of inflows, and they're using naira to settle the people rather than give the people the naira, the dollar, so that they can sell it freely in the market. You've got all that going. Then you have the banks themselves earning their own dollars, because quite a lot of the banks are foreign accounts and foreign branches and all of that, and earning and trading and earning dollars. And those dollars are in their vaults, and there are other ways that they earn dollars as well. And I've just mentioned to you, even on the eligible buyer and the eligible seller, you can do a deal with somebody that you know is bringing in some dollars after their export, and then you buy their dollars on some rate, which is known to both of you, and then you still go to the official window to fulfill all righteousness by selling at 800 or 790, whatever. And then
but all of that is illegal.
There's a margin there that nobody knows.
But it is illegal.
There's so many such examples.
Sorry to interrupt you, Prof. But let me bring in Wale, who has called in from Germany. Good morning, Wale.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for calling.
Okay, I'm calling for the first time.
Oh, we're delighted to have you. Thank you very much. Go ahead. You got a question for Prof.
Okay, I just want to quickly jump into the actual problem we're actually having in Nigeria as regards to foreign exchange. The actual problem is just the control. And I'm actually into diesel business, and I know where the problem is. Sitting down in the office and making that decisions is just actually a problem. So what the new CBN governor, what they need to do is just get to the streets. No matter billions of dollars they are going to pump into that market, I'm so sure everything is going to be consumed within 1 week. Now, let's ask ourselves, can you go to a bank now and just request for $1,000? Can you pay with your debit card anywhere in the world? This is not possible. If they want the rate to drop down, if all banks in Nigeria, they publish now that, okay, you can now use your debit card to pay up to $4,000 in a month, the price will drop down to $750. And also, if you want to pay school fees, if you want to pay for your Netflix, anything you want to pay, that restriction that was placed, that is the problem. And I'm actually into cryptocurrency trading. And that's where the problem actually started from. We trade nothing less than $2 million US daily on cryptos. And we help people to pay for RMB. Tell the CBN governor to go to Alaba International Market on a daily basis, to be going to trade fairs, to be going to all those markets where we have importers. Let them have access to the money directly. That is the solution. Or sitting down in the office and making decisions, no matter what they pump into the market, I will tell you that all our banks, they are part of it. The money is will go back to all the bureau de change, and that is what is happening.
Okay.
And the issue of inflow, let me just say this now. If you receive, let's say, $10,000 inflow now, go to your bank account, go to your bank and ask them that you want to buy 1,000. They will tell you the money is not available. That is.
Well, thank you very much for calling in, Wale, on that. Prof, I'll take a break now, but as soon as I come back, I'll get your views on Wale's submission, and we'll continue the conversation. Okay, welcome back. And our guest is Professor Ken Ife. He's helping us to understand the worsening Forex illiquidity that we have on our hands. And in the meantime, when we were on break, Sunny in the UK called in. Good morning to you, Sunny.
For this. Now, what I like to contribute is that, like the Prof said, it's about the law of demand and supply. However, it looks simple, but it's not that very straightforward. The current situation we are in today in Nigeria is more around the confidence in our economy, okay, which is causing people. Like you see big people now, even if you have 100,000 naira today or 100 million, what people quickly do is to go and see how they convert it to dollars, and they just stash it somewhere. And when you look at value system, it's about the money flowing from one hand to another person. The government of the day is making effort not just to sit and continue with the way things have been. So there have been efforts to actually solve problems. However, to solve that problem, it's definitely going to cost almost all of us one thing or the other. We need to make some shift. So what I'm going to say to the Prof, especially having been involved in some of the government policies in the past, as he has brilliantly explained some of these issues, is that what is the government going to be doing in addressing this confidence in the system such that we can still keep our naira without having to worry that, it's going to suddenly depreciate? Because we just have to tell ourselves this truth, that it is the pain of the problem of skyrocketing rate of the exchange rate that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonny, for holding on and for the question. Prof, the whole matter of confidence in the economy that he brought up.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me deal with the previous one. What he was speaking to is they were speaking to liberalization of the foreign exchange market, and then also to the fact that you need to have a higher degree of transparency and of course accountability, but more to do with transparency and openness in those transactions. Then when you bring in the issue of speculation, if the bank that you went to says that you asked for $1,000, they say they don't have it, it is because they are expecting and speculating that the value of the dollar will rise. So they are going to make more money by holding that dollar and selling it at a much higher price in the next week or so. But if the liberalization has allowed dollars to come into the market and people are buying and selling, and the prices are coming down. When you go to the bank, they'll say to you, because they know that if you don't sell today at this price, tomorrow it could even get lower and lower and lower. So they lose money. Because don't forget, they bought these dollars. And that's the same applies with other individuals. So you beat speculation. Speculation is a very dangerous thing. And what has not helped us is that our own financial strength is open there. JP Morgan has said, oh, Nigeria only has 3.5 billion, that the rest of them are committed. And then when Singapore had this problem, they refused to tell anybody what the Forex is. They were fighting because once the speculators don't know the size of your armory, it is a war. He says it's a financial war. That's what Singapore said. This is financial war. I won't tell you my secret. My secret is how much I have in the reserve. So they won't tell you. So they were fighting speculators. So they don't know how much they have in the reserve. So they started selling their dollar and bringing it. And that's how they defeated them. So when everything about us is in the open now, you know, we've seen that it's only 3.5. So really, well, it doesn't have that money. Once within a month, it goes and all that stuff. So, but not to say that we are going to go back on our transparency, but it's just for you to know that you are fighting an animal that has a lot in his armory. And so when you open up the space and there's transparency and there's a flow, a good flow, and you have this instrument, domestic, foreign instruments that are going to attract this one, then you're going to be sounding a serious alarm to the speculator. These monies are going to go down. The rate will go down. So better bring out your money and start, transacting. So that's how it's going to play out.
Okay. Well, now, has anything been put in view to that can affect this beyond what you said essentially, which is about we need to increase production at the end of the day so that we ourselves can earn something. By which I mean, you would have thought that it now becomes illegal if a bank is withholding, dollars that are yours, that is in their account, in your accounting with them, but because they themselves are speculating. Anything about the president's 2 executive orders and all the new policies being brought to bear? Anything about all of that will make all of this sort of illegal? But before you go on that question, Prof, Ada has called in. Let me put Ada on. Good morning, Ada, calling in from Jos. Ada in Jos. Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Ayori. Good morning to Professor Ken. Mr. Ayori, I don't know, calling from Jos Plateau State. I'm not an economist, but I don't think it's a rocket science to know what is the problem, just like Prof said. The government should cut off those expenses that involve the spending of the dollar. In other words, government should reduce traveling abroad, and where the president or whomsoever has to make that change, the number of aides, officials, or what have you must be drastically reduced. Government should focus on possible product substitution that will help to cut down the use of the dollar. Another aspect is to address, to fix our hospitals and our tertiary institutions so that it will discourage medical and educational tourism, respectively. All these ventures involve paying in dollars, which contributes in putting the pressure on the naira. Now, the National Assembly are not helping matters. Those cars, even if I don't want to quarrel about the cars, they said they are supposed to buy the 150 million cars or whatever for each person. As if they are buying those cars in Nigeria, it has been a different ballgame. Dollars. What are we talking about? We are going to Sokoto to look for what is in our Sokoto. We are the problem. We have a penchant for foreign goods. There's no magic the central bank manager can do. I said it twice now, but there's no magic. It's putting money into the system. It just has pouring water in a basket, We have to move away from consumption to production. That is a problem. That is a simple economics behind this thing, Can you imagine that we don't encourage the use of made in Nigeria goods? Everything. I think if they can borrow a bit from Soludo of Anambra State, what he wears is Nigerian. The cars he's using, all his stuff, everything. They are making use of the one produced by Innocent and all that. That's the way to go. But we keep on, talking about the policies, not backing it up with things that can grow the economy. There's no magic that central bank manager can do. Remember very well I said it. There's no magic. So let's talk about Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much, Ada, for calling in. Okay, Prof, her commentary, she added on top of what I was sort of exploring before. Maybe you could combine the two.
She raised a very, very critical point, which is the import-dependent economy, which is fed by an appetite for foreign goods. When you have an import-dependent economy, which fits into the design of our special international division of labor, what happens is actually more than what you can imagine. First of all, you are exposed to every global headwind. Every global headwind, not just financial headwinds, because you are on a transmission belt. Your economy is on the transmission belt of every conceivable global headwind. So if you have a health crisis like COVID-19, it will sweep you. If you have a trouble in Russia and Ukraine, it will affect you. Even though you produce oil and gas that Russia is producing, but because you are import dependent on Europe, for example, that 40% of their energy, gas, is coming from Russia, then their price rises are going to affect you because you now bring in those imported inflation. Even though it is the America subprime crisis, mortgage crisis, what's it going to do with you? But it affects you. And that's what our bank suffered in 2008. So you have all these exposures because it's an import-dependent economy. And the only source you have is a commodity that its price you can't determine, you can't control. So we have to have both actions on the demand and supply side. And you also saw in the measure that we outlined by the minister that they are acting on the demand side as well by saying, okay, cut down on the expenditure, cut down on I think you even have to look at staff, for example, because NAPC is carrying a huge dead weight. You are keeping staff of 4 refineries and you don't even get any refinery working. But if you had encouraged modular refinery, they would have absorbed some of those staff to reduce your costs. So you have a lot of cost overhang that that they have to continue. And then you also have the thing that you are talking about, senators and other people wanting to buy this kind of cars. You could have done Nigerian assembly car or whatever to include the specification, but also they're also demanding Forex. So all of this demand could be curtailed. And then, okay, if you look at another one, almost 80% of the manufacturing capacity in Nigeria and manufacturing industries depend on foreign imported raw materials. If you look at the pharmaceutical, it's over 95%. Active pharmaceutical ingredients that are imported, they just put water or syrup or starch to compound tablets. We're importing everything. So what that means is a continuous charge on your foreign exchange. And then so you must deal with that as part of your import substitution or backward integration and see how it was done with cement. Obasanjo said, look, you know what, I'm not going to allow you to import clinkers anymore unless you show me your factory. And I have already, I suggested that. Tell those 5 big oil majors who have tank farms and who are importing the PMS and exporting the crude, tell them to come and show you their modular refinery before you give them license to continue to produce. Instantly, within 6 months, 5 modular refineries will come in on stream because they themselves need it to refine their products. Will come to tank farm. From there, they can export it, or it could enter into national distribution system, and then you give them the license to continue to do this. So, in practical measures, we'll have success.
One moment, Prof. Beg your pardon. Again, I'm sorry for butting in, but Ibrahim in Jigawa State has called in. Good morning, Ibrahim.
Good morning, Mr. Yori.
Thank you for calling in. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, please.
Pertaining to the topic under discussion, the financial crisis the country finds itself in, I want to contribute. I want to say that I think we are our own enemies. We are not doing anything to help ourselves. As one of the speakers rightly said, we are a consumer nation. And we have this lavish appetite for anything foreign. And our leaders, too, are not helping matters. They have this appetite for anything foreign. The recent purchase of exotic vehicles for the National Assembly members, I think it's a typical example. That is a kind of capital flight too. You don't buy those exotic cars with local currency. And in a situation where we have a drastic deficit in our foreign exchange, I see no reason why our lawmakers will still go ahead to request for those exotic foreign cars when we have car manufacturing industries in the country. At least that money can be channeled to one of the companies producing cars in Nigeria.
Okay.
At least
All
there
right.
won't be that capital flight.
Indeed. Well,
And
thank you very much, Ibrahim, calling in from Jigawa State. Professor Ife, it is Ada who started this particular trend, and it's been picked up there by Ibrahim. And I think the sort of principle is that every little bit counts. And you spoke about appetites. If our appetite is such that we need dollars to satisfy these cravings that we have for all these things that cost dollars to buy, do you think, Prof, that our whole national attitude to these things, we are not yet conducting ourselves as if we are in an emergency, albeit a financial emergency, where, for instance, they made the example, I know that the cars that they want to buy in the National Assembly, well, you might say it's a drop in the ocean, but if the attitude was right, then that kind of a thing might be anathema in the sense that it's not in this time. People have brought up the matter about Anambra State and Soludo and him dealing with a national assembler, although I think manufacturer is the name that they would prefer. But you've also said that has its own very, its own foreign exchange content as well. But so I guess what I'm asking, Prof, is do you think the attitude is not quite right yet? We don't have a sense of urgency that we can't just be spending dollars anyhow, not at this time.
Well, let me stick to the example you give on automobile. One is policy can change a lot of things. And I remember in the first speech of the president, President Tinubu, he alluded to opening up credit, credit creation. And I thought that would have a more far-reaching effect. Because when you come to that, because Mr. Thatcher used this in 1981 when I first went to London for my PhD. So what he did was to allow the big boys with dollars in the petrodollars from Saudi Arabia, all that area, to enter into our credit system. Now, so what happens is that you can go and have lease, purchase, or hire purchase. One of the big challenges in our economy is that if you want to buy a car, you have to buy 100% cash. You buy a house, 100%. And then, and then you expect civil servants not to have a car. They have to go and do what they have to do to get that bulk money to pay for these things. And they must have the house. So you can see how you encourage it by the kind of policy that you have. So when you have that credit, now what happens is this. Look at, stay at your automobile. We import 400,000 second-hand cars into Nigeria through Cotonou alone. And those cars are paid for in dollars. They don't get paid them in naira when they are bringing it from Germany or America. No, they paid in dollars. And so they are part of the demand for dollar. Then you come back and say, all right, you know what? What's the manufacturing capacity of our local car assemblers? Let's say about 10,000 cars a month, a year. They can increase to 100,000 cars 10 times, tenfold, if you allow credit to flow to them. In other words, if credit is flowing to the manufacturer, and if you go to them and say, okay, please, I'm putting down 10%, then the credit take over and pay the manufacturer that 90%. And then it's giving him dollar for the next import he's going to do of spares, and then now this guy pays back this money over 3 years or 4 years. You have destroyed the second-hand market. Because next year he will bring this car back and trade it for a new car. Then the man producing the assembly car will increase tenfold. Nigerians will be 10 times more people are employed simply because the credit is not flowing to consumers that will use it to go and buy food and cause more inflation. The credit is flowing to the manufacturer that is manufacturing. You are building manufacturing capacity. You are building what they call it, value addition capacity, and then you are making sure you are targeting it to substitute for the import of 400,000 cars coming into the country, second-hand cars. So you achieve, a double barrel. You achieve two things at the same time, just by using policy to attack it.
Indeed. And I think very recently the president was saying, I think it was at that very economic summit meeting, that by the first quarter of next year, he expects one of the credit programs that he's been thinking about to sort of take off. It escapes my mind now exactly which one of them. Was it about education or something like that? So, but your explanation is on how credit could benefit is very well taken. But as to the question of, I don't know, did you want to comment on whether how urgently the mental psyche, everybody still, it's like it'll be okay, and indeed it will be okay. But it's like we're not going through any kind of periods of restricting ourselves because of what is happening now. Life is pretty much continuing as usual, and I think is one of the points that Ada made, and I think someone else who called in, was it the gentleman who called in from Germany? That whole matter about there's nothing to show in the way we go about our lives that we have an urgency on our hands. It's like people are thinking that it's going to be okay. In the meantime, we can more or less continue the way we are. Or is that a misplaced notion?
What the president did not say, I hereby declare a state of emergency on Forex. He didn't say that. But the measure that he's rolling out are exactly what would happen if he was to say that. So he's actually doing it. It's only in food security that he said, I have a state of emergency on food security. Yeah, he's doing that. So he's invoking doctrine of necessity. He's bringing in statutory forbearance on many of those macroprudential measures, and then all that capital account. He's bringing that happening. Everything that needs to happen is happening right now. He didn't want to just call it state of emergency on Forex. No, but it's happening. For a presidential order, executive orders to come one after another on monetary policy, and then you've got them also on fiscal policy, and then you have them coming together. That is possible, because otherwise I would have said, what the hell is president trying to do? Is he trying to control an independent institution, which is the central bank? But it is an emergency. So that's why he's having all this forbearance. Forbearance means you're suspending something for a little while, and then for we don't know how long, and then you are trying to see if you can correct the situation, because we're in serious trouble in that arena.
All right, then.
And, so he needed that kind of action, and that's the action he's taking.
Indeed. All right, then. So thank you very much. It's a fine place to leave it, Professor Ken Ife, macroeconomist and public affairs analyst. Thank you very much for the enlightenment you bring to the subject this morning on our program.